And 3Ds are really kind of having to solve some of those tough problems. How can I take things that I get off the shelf and modify those to work for an operational team in these varied environments?
Welcome to the Insight Thru Experience Podcast. Podcast created to provide information about what life is like inside the most specialized special tactics organization in the U.S. Air Force. In these episodes, we'll be bringing you the experiences from many of our experts, ranging from our human performance optimization staff, our combat mission supporters, as well as our special warfare operators. Our main objective with these podcasts are to provide the listener with a unique look inside our culture of excellence in hopes that you will make the 724 a future career goal. Now, sit back, relax, take some notes, prepare to hear from some of the Air Force's finest. Thank you for joining us on the Insight Thru Experience Podcast. Welcome back to the show, everybody. This week's going to be special. We are moving away from our operator line of effort for a little while, and we're going to start focusing on some combat mission support AFSCs for the podcast. This week, we have our 3 Deltas, our cyber professionals. Coming at us from our A6 shop is David. David has had an interesting career. He's been up at the command for a long time, and hearing from his perspective from the A6 staff really gives broad perspective to the conversation today around the 3 Deltas and what they do for the 724. We also have Tyler, who is out at Det 1 with me, out at the training squadron. I get to see him on a daily basis, and we get to hear from his experience of how he manages the load inside the Det, and also with operator training course, because he is also the lead support 3D for them as well. So good week, good podcast. Hope you guys enjoyed this as much as I did. And let's get to it. Appreciate all of you tuning in to the Insight Thru Experience Podcast. All right, so before we dive into deeper water this week, I'm going to have our 2 3D professionals introduce themselves and quickly just tell us what you do for the 724.
Hey, how you doing? My name's David. My AFSC is 3D072. I'm currently the Group A6 Superintendent. So for me, on a daily basis, really a lot of meetings, but ultimately it's managing people and managing priorities and tasks for all the functions that Group A6 handles.
My name is Tyler. I'm a 3D1X3 radio troop. Currently working as a A6 support, comm support for OTC, and been doing that for about a year and a half now.
Describe what OTC is for the audience.
OTC is the operator training course. We get combat control and PJs, TACPs apply to the unit. They get accepted after selection, and then they go through an operator training course before they're pushed off to the operational unit.
Yeah, perfect. For any listeners that have listened to any previous podcast, you've probably heard tons about OTC, but Tyler is the guy out there making all the magic behind the scenes happen on the comm side. So before we get any farther, I love getting some more background, though, and I think it helps relate people to you guys a little bit. So David, starting with you, where'd you grow up? What drove you coming to the Air Force, and how'd you end up in cyber?
I grew up in Stone Mountain, Georgia. That's where I lived my teenage years, up through some portion of college. So I did go to college prior to joining the Air Force. That was my first attempt at what I was going to do with my life. Well, go to school. That's what people tell me I'm supposed to do. So I went to school. Graphic design was actually my first major. At some point in time later, I kind of crossed over into computer science stuff, but ultimately I kind of realized that, I don't know, I just wasn't getting a lot of satisfaction from college. I like to learn. I think I'm fairly intelligent, but the traditional structure of school just really didn't float my boat too much. And I didn't really know what I wanted to do with it either. So it was like, why am I doing this? You know, I want to enjoy what I'm doing. At some point as well, there were some family considerations. I was a late child. my parents were in their mid-40s when they had me. So by the time I'm joining college, my dad's trying not to do anything with his life other than drink sweet tea and sit on the porch. So he started having some health issues that caused him to not be able to work. So young David Smith realized that I got to stop being a burden. I'm wasting time with college. I got to get out on my own so I can let my dad relax. So I had a family friend that was a colonel in the U.S. Air Force. He kind of said, maybe you should try that. Because I did talk with the Navy first. I went by the Army, and he said, you're a smart guy. Why don't you go to the Air Force? So that's what got me in the door. The Army was gung-ho to have me. They were like, oh, wow, these ASVAB scores, we like that. Come to us. But no, the Air Force, he pushed me to the Air Force. That's how I got in the door. As far as being a cyber professional, much like how I went into college, I kind of went into the Air Force not really knowing what the right specific job for me was. I just knew I wanted to do something that had some meaning. So I kind of just went needs of the Air Force. I was General Electric is the broad skill set that they said I was qualified for. And then during basic training, we had our guidance counselor meetings, and they were said, hey, there's a lot of openings in the 3DO career field that deals with computers. And I said, I like computers. Let's do it. So I took it and, went on my way and started my life.
How has that fit been, David, since you've been in? Does this feel like a natural fit for you since you came in?
Oh, absolutely. Looking back on it, I definitely recognize that I was lucky in a lot of regards. Like I think for me, things kind of went the way they should have gone. And at the time, it wasn't like I had this clear path ahead of me. So I feel very lucky. I think where I ended up is where I needed to be. And I definitely would not make a single change about what career path I chose or any place that I've been or anything that I've done in the Air Force.
That's awesome, man. I'm a big believer in the universe is unfolding just like it should. And that's good, man. If we just don't resist it, we end up figuring out that we're right where we're supposed to be. So awesome story. Tyler, how about you?
I grew up in a really small town in Eastern Oregon. And as far as the desire to join the military, I had plans to join right out of high school. And that didn't end up working. I got a scholarship for a local community college. And I tried that whole thing and did that for about a year and a half, and it wasn't my thing. So ended up going back to the military idea, and had a mentor that was in the Army for a long time, and had discussed it a lot with him, and he ended up suggesting the Air Force just based on his experience of spending time in the military and whatnot. So I was about 25 years old when I decided to join. And before that, I started working in a lumber yard as a junior in high school. And so I did that for about 8.5 to 9 years. And once I got married, realized you got to make some changes, make a little more money, and have a more stable job. So that was another push. And I think it all just kind of fell into place as far as just kind of worked out. That didn't really require a whole lot of thought or effort. So I think it just kind of was one of those meant to be things.
How'd you end up in cyber?
Well, I went and took the ASVAB and got my results, and the recruiter basically said, you can pick anything, general or electric, and he just gave me mechanical or electrical, and gave me a list of jobs to put down on my list. He said, here, you take a week, look these over, Google them, pick out 10 jobs you think you might like, and come back in a week. And so I picked out 10, and radio RF transmission systems was actually on the list. It wasn't my number one, but it was, somewhere in the middle there, and gave him the list, and he kept trying to push me to be a cop, and he was a security forces guy. So I was like, no, I don't want to be a cop. Nothing against cops, but I want to do something a little bit different. And he's like, all right, well, we'll keep
something
looking.
Better. Is that what you're saying, Tyler?
Yeah.
Something better.
It took about 8 months before one of those jobs on that list popped up, and he called me back and he's like, "Hey, we got one for you. It's going to be RF transmission systems." I'm like, "Cool, let's do it." So about a month later, I was going through MEPS. So
I love hearing these stories. So what's interesting about both of you guys? David, how old were you when you came in? You said you did college. So how old were you when you enlisted?
I was 22.
So got 22 and 25. And both of you have a stellar reputation at the 724 too. And even when we bring in operators who had some previous life experience after high school before they came in, it seems to be a trend line too. So it doesn't surprise me. Both of you guys told me that you were older a little bit when you came in. I think there's some substance behind that. So what I'd like to know now, what was your experience like at those first duty stations? I'm guessing you at least had 1 or 2 duty stations before you came here. So Tyler, we'll start with you this time. What were some of those experiences like before you came to 724?
Well, after tech school, I went to Robins Air Force Base in Georgia, and that's my only base I've been at before here. I was there for 4 years, and I had really good experiences there. I ended up deploying 2 times out of there. Gained a lot of experience on those deployments. Did a lot of TDYs and stuff, and probably the biggest thing I got out of that was I ended up pretty much doing everything I could do in that position, and kind of if you say hit my peak at that point, just with what I could do in the unit. And I was a radio SATCOM guy, so every time I would go near a computer, people would kind of get a little uneasy. There was kind of one of those things they had in the shop where like the radio dudes are on one end, computer guys are on the other end. Like you don't associate with each other. Yeah,
everybody listening knows that I'm a prior operator. So if I ask a really dumb question, just forgive me. But so what was your job at Robins? Were you working with base comms? Were you assigned to a unit working comms? How did that work out?
We were a detachment there, so we weren't assigned to the actual base. Our entire chain of leadership was separate from the base. We were a combat comm unit, so it was a enabling unit essentially. We didn't provide any base support really at all. All of our in-garrison stuff was just training and working on equipment to prepare for deployments.
Sounds like a much better job than working for anything to do with base stuff, I'm guessing.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah.
How about you, David?
Well, I'm finding out that Tyler and I have a lot in common. We're both handsome. We both joined the military a little late, and we were both at combat comm right out the gate. I was there as well. In the 2003 to 2007 time frame. And like I said earlier, with my career field almost being a perfect choice for me without me really knowing I was making the perfect choice, looking back on it, combat comm was kind of the same for me as well. Now that I have more perspective and kind of know what certain things are doing and happening in the Air Force, base comm really would have been a place for me that I would have gotten experiences for certain, but I think combat comm was unique in that it helped me really be prepared for my next assignment and ultimately where I'm at now is 724. Just because of the mission set, we did a lot of tactical. Like Tyler said, we weren't supporting base comms. Our job was to deploy and set up remote comms in austere environments. So we did a lot of training. We built a lot of pallets, and we did a lot of exercises. But then we also deployed. So I got a lot of good deployment time there in my early days, which I think is a great benefit to young airmen getting experience, right? Because you're kind of you're getting on the front lines a little bit more from a support perspective, I mean, operators are always naturally closer. So for support guys, sometimes you may or may not get those experiences to be able to see that. Combat comm gave us a little bit of a taste. And as I progressed from there, it was very natural for me. From where I went from combat comm, I then went to the Joint Communications Unit, which I'd say is a step up from combat comm. So I feel like, man, it was just great progression. Like, I don't know that I could have planned it any better. If this was my end goal, I don't know what else I could have done that would have prepared me any better than the units I went to.
Yeah, what a great background that is. And for both of you, how do you end up in combat comm right out of, David, was yours right out of school like Tyler? Like, how did y'all get chosen for that? Is that decided at your school, or how does that work? Luck of the draw?
So yeah, luck of the draw is some of it. They just kind of tell you. Like I imagine somewhere in a back room there at that time, I was like, oh man, some NCOs somewhere just drawing names out of a hat and throwing something on a dartboard and saying David Smith gets Robbins. I actually tried to switch to something else because I told you earlier, right? I grew up in Stone Mountain, Georgia. Robbins Air Force Base is an hour and a half from Stone Mountain, Georgia. Not exactly what I envisioned right out the gate. I actually tried to trade with someone to go to England right out the gate, and it just didn't work out.
So you're saying you didn't want to be or necessarily that close to home? Is that what I'm hearing?
It wasn't what I envisioned. It's like, man, I joined the Air Force to see other places. I was born 20 minutes from Robbins Air Force Base. Not exactly what I thought at the time as a dream.
And we are talking Macon too. So I grew up in Georgia. My mom used to live in Snellville, David. So we got to talk later on because I know everything about Stone Mountain. But yeah, Macon isn't like the biggest pleasure spot for people that grow up in northern Georgia.
It is not. No, definitely not. But it worked out, I think, because like I said, I kind of got some tactical experience as much as a comm guy can right out the gate, I think. And I really think that paved the way for me to be successful later on.
Awesome. So moving naturally into, and David, I know the response, but I'm looking even prior to your JCU experience. How did you guys find out about the 724 or even the 24th back then, if we look beyond 2010-ish timeframe? But how did you guys find out about it?
I was at Robbins, and we had one of the recruiters came down. It was Rob. And he actually got invited by our squadron commander who worked up here on Bragg, and he knew about 724 and worked not within the 724, but pretty closely with them. And he had connections up there and brought one of the recruiters down. And I just sat in the movie theater and listened to Rob talk about the unit, and he showed a video, answered a bunch of questions, and I got his business card and ended up filling out an application, and pretty much that's it.
How long were you at the unit before that brief, Tyler?
I was there, about 2 years. I just got back from my first deployment, and then I ended up deploying back to back. I had about 2 months between deployments, and did the brief, got the application, and then talked to Rob on the phone a few times, and he said, hold off, wait till I get back from my deployment before I submit. And so that's what I ended up doing. And
here comes one of those questions. Here comes one of those questions that may be a dumb one, but what were your options at the end of your tour down at Robbins? Do you stay in combat comms once you're in it, or is there a chance that you're going to go get another assignment? So you kind of wanted directed your path. Like, how did that work out?
Honestly, at that point, I didn't really know I wasn't really thinking that far ahead. Being there just 2 years, and it kind of flew by so quick, I wasn't really giving much thought on where I would go after that. We discussed with the family going overseas and going to an assignment overseas, and this just kind of fell into my lap a little bit. The timing ended up working out, being able to meet with Rob and kind of get a little bit of a history on the unit and what the unit does. And it was at that point at Robbins that I was, itching for something more, ended up doing a lot of training and getting a lot of experience. And I wouldn't say we were held back a little bit in the radio career field, but we were definitely not given the opportunities or flexibility to kind of grow, if you would. So kind of feel like you just hit your peak and you want to move on to something else. And that's kind of the feeling I was getting.
Love it. How about you, David?
Yeah, I'll tag on a little bit to what Tyler was getting at there at the end, because I think for people that are driven for self-improvement, who are after doing something worthwhile in life, I think you get to a point at a place and you can really kind of tell if you're honest with yourself Have I reached my peak here? Can I do any more? Can the unit give me any more? Can I give the unit any more? And for me, that's how I recall leaving Robbins. You ask about 724. I would say, I remember going back to basic. I was definitely familiar with at least the PJ, CCT career fields, right? I remember getting a brief in basic and thinking, man, that sounds kind of cool. But it was also a little scary. So I was just like, man, it wasn't something I was trying to do. But I don't remember having any information on the 724. I don't recall even knowing the 724 when I was at Robbins. So my inject to this community was definitely from a prior JCU guy who was at Robbins, who had left JCU and came to Robbins. And he kind of started telling me about it. And the way he talked about it, it just seemed like it was like, hey, yeah, maybe that's the place for me to kind of take my skills to the next level. And that's where I kind of went. And obviously, once I got to JCU, you're kind of your eyes are opened to this whole other world that sometimes is far into certain areas of the Air Force. You read things in the PDG, and you're like, oh yeah, there's these guys that are out there doing things, and it's like it just seems like those are strangers in a faraway land. It's like, wow, okay, I'll never know those guys. But then when you get here and you're supporting them directly, and those types of things, it's like, oh, okay, this is cool, this is where I need to be. So yeah, when I left Robbins, it was like I need to move up and move out for myself. One of the things that I like to mention, shout out to my wife at this point. One thing I hadn't mentioned is my wife is in the Air Force as well, same career field.
And I know that. That's cool.
Yes. So being in the military, you're already a smaller percentage of the population. I think being dual military, maybe even a little bit smaller, it brings with it some benefits, common understanding, but some complications as well. How do you manage each other's careers? So I kind of drug her along with me. I was like, hey, I'm going to JCU. You're coming with me. And she was like, I'm not sure about it. But she came. We dealt with that, but at the end of the day, I think it was a good place for both of us. And I definitely enjoyed and valued the experiences that I got out of that place. And obviously, once I was there, I became more familiar with these other organizations, such as 724. Having some indirect contact with them. So that was kind of how I got on this path.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I feel you with the married to another military member. Both of us were inside the compound for 5 years when I got married too, and we were both on the same pager, and we both had we had a child, and man, what complications that creates when you have to come in very early in the morning, no notice. Yeah, so I feel it, man.
Yeah. We don't have kids, so that was one thing. That was actually some conscious decisions for us at one point. Frankly, some of that stuff didn't come naturally, so it was kind of like, do we want kids? Is that something we desire? Can we balance that with what we're trying to do with our careers?
That's a good point. Let me ask that right now to both of you, because Tyler, I know you have kids, but and we're kind of jumping ahead, but that's okay. We have no schema here to how we're doing this, but Tyler, how is it managing the job and the family and the kids up here? I know we're busy. I don't think we'd ever try to hide that from anybody, but how is that managing for you and the kids?
It's definitely stressful at times. Thankfully, my wife is an awesome mother, and she's a stay-at-home mom, so she stays with the kids, and she's really, really good about making sure they have what they need when I'm gone and taking care of them. And that's just with her help alone, that really eases a little bit of the burden on me. And there's times I feel like she's doing more than she should, and but she definitely helps a lot. And the ops tempo is pretty high, doing what we're doing here, and having that support from your spouse definitely makes a big difference. And and not only just support from your spouse, but just the people you work with. They're definitely willing to help out any way they can, and it's kind of like having your own little second family. So that definitely helps.
Yeah, awesome. David, from your position here in a kind of that leadership role, how do you see that playing out from above, and how do you guys manage that in general, the busyness of the unit and taking care of the families?
It's definitely a struggle, and that's one of those things that over time, I never really imagined, I'd be where I'm at today as someone about to put on senior master sergeant and being in this type of position where the day-to-day lives of some people is kind of in my hands to some extent. It's definitely something that I think hard about because the mission is what we're after, right? Mission success. But an environment like this, people are key to that. I think people are very important in the SOF because of the tempo. Because we ask more of them, people are critical to the success. And in order to have mission effectiveness, you really got to take care of the people because it can be exhausting here. Like I've been in this command for 12 years at this point. You have to want to do it to stick it out that long. And I don't have kids. The worst I got to worry about is the cat and the dog if the wife and I deploy. So that's where my stress level ends. So, but I do try to be sympathetic and take those things into account and know that people that are underneath me have different issues, and I got to think about those things. So we do our best to balance it. Do my best to push back on things we need to push back on, and weigh everything we're doing because we're always doing more than we have the capacity to do. And that's why you got to make sure that what we're doing is worthy, and it's getting after some strategic objective. And I try to push boundaries and say no or say, hey, I can't do that without having this massive cost over here. If I do that, Tyler and his family may reach a breaking point, or someone else that has family has these other considerations. So we have to weigh those things as leaders and figure out what's more important at the time, and figure out places that we can give back, or give areas a break.
Yeah, I like asking these questions too, because the folks out there that are listening that may be thinking about this as their next choice of assignment, I just like them to hear guys like you talking about how you're thinking from a higher level, because to me that would put me at ease a little bit to know that people are balancing my family's needs before I come there, or if I do come there, they're going to balance those needs and they're going to take them seriously, because I think that's what's really special about our place. And we'll talk about the hiring process here in a minute, but we get to hire people that fit our model. And as you can hear, these two guys right here, highly selective process that they go through to get here. And then you can hear why they were chosen, because just the way they're speaking right now, to me, this would really, and I'm speaking from an ex-operator point of view, but just hearing these conversations right here, this feels like home. Just listening to you talk, listen to both of you talk right now, to me, this would feel like home to me. So I really love what y'all are saying here. I want to dig into y'all's assessment and selection experience a little bit. So Tyler, we'll go back to you starting this time, but if you had to describe the experience to those thinking about applying, how would you explain that to them?
Well, my assessment experience was we'll start with the application process. That was pretty straightforward. It was very lengthy, but I think that they get a lot of good information off that application, and that application definitely took me time to fill out. It wasn't something that I just sat down and whipped out in 5 minutes. It took a few days to think about the questions and answer it honestly. And I think that's one of the big things about whether you're doing the application or actually here for assessment is just being honest. And it's definitely kind of a shock, a little bit stressful, because I had no idea of what it was going to be like, showing up here for a week-long assessment. I thought it would be just PT test and how can you do that, can you work on this radio, can you do this, can you do that type of thing, and then on your way. But they definitely dig in pretty deep and they really want to get to know who you are and how well you work with other people, and of course how well you do your job as well. But I think one of the big things that they're looking for too is how trainable can you be, and can we teach you to do things that might not be exactly aligned with your job description or your AFSC. And so it was a kind of an eye opener for me. Definitely didn't expect what the assessment was going to be like, and but it was definitely good, and I learned a lot about even myself going through the assessment process.
Yeah, awesome. David, how about you? I know you'd already been through the JCU process, so how was it coming over to ours?
Yeah, definitely a little bit different, right? Because I'd already gone through a selectively manned organization. I would say to some extent, though, in some cases that might make it even more stressful, because to some extent it's easy to kind of fall into the trap that I'm in this community already. I've proven myself a success. But really for the people that are driven, like I talked about earlier, you're like, man, if this is where I really want to go. I know everything about it. This is really where I want to go. So if you're turned down, it's almost, I feel like maybe even a little more emotional. It's now what? Now I got to take a step down or something. I got to reevaluate myself. And because I knew people over here as well, that kind of makes it more personal. So not only if I was turned down, not only would it be an organization was turning me down, but people that I had worked with in the past might have had something to do with turning me down. So
that's a great point. I guess you're sitting across from people that during the assessment, correct or no?
Yes, I definitely was, because 724 has had a lot of prior JCU members in the past, and I knew several of those people. I had worked with them. I had deployed with them in the past in JCU. So yes, I definitely knew the people. So when you have that personal contact with people that are assessing you, sometimes if you get negative feedback, it can hit you even harder. Luckily, that's not the way it went for me. I did get accepted, but I think looking back on it, that it definitely would have hurt pretty hard if I had not been, because I wind back the clock to when I was in JCU, and I try to compare, hey, how did I feel when I applied to JCU versus how did I feel when I applied to 724? When I applied to JCU, this place was still foreign to me, and it was almost like on another level. So it was like, hey, I don't know that I have it. I don't know that I'm cut out for it. So if they don't accept me, it's like, well, they know because they're top notch. They're DoD's finest communicators. If they don't see that in me, then I got to go work harder and I got to improve myself. But once you're in, it's like, well, I kind of know I'm cut out for some part of it. So if anybody turns me down, then wow, what did I do wrong?
Tyler, how about you? What's a piece of advice you would give out there to folks who are prepping or thinking about coming up to the ANS process?
I would say just have an open mind. Come here, don't look into it too much. Don't try to find out, what it's going to be like and cheat the system, so to speak, but just come open-minded and just be willing to answer tough questions, be willing to open up about yourself and just be 100% honest.
Yeah, I say it all the time when we're doing these operator podcasts as well. But if you come up here and try to play a game or be somebody you're not, we're going to see through that in about 10 seconds, and your chance of getting hired is about zero. Yep. So just like you said, and I'm so glad you brought it up, of how they're looking for an example of conflict, and they already knew that you had conflict with somebody. So now they're going to know if you're playing a game or being reserved. So it's just come up here, be open, be honest, and let the process work as it's intended, because it will work. And that doesn't mean you're going to get hired, but you will leave here a better human being, because we're going to give you feedback before you leave too. Awesome. David, how about you?
Yeah, that made me think about one thing I'd like to mention. Like if I was giving anybody out there one piece of advice about coming into this community, like there's a big difference between a lot of people in this community are confident. But there's a big difference between confident and cocky. Having humility is key, because we get some people in that are coming, and typically we're hoping to get the best that other organizations have. But sometimes people have that chip on their shoulder, like, I am the best at where I'm at. But you may or may not be the best at this place. So come in with humility, and just your actions will speak. Like, you don't need to brag, you don't need to boast. Just show off your best side, and be and just don't be cocky.
Thanks for saying that. And I think most people find out, and I'm speaking especially on the operator side too, they may have been their top dog at their unit, but you get here and you realize that you're just fighting to tread, just keep your head above water most days here, because you were surrounded by hand-selected people who are obviously the best, or we wouldn't have hired them. So, A, it's an amazing place to grow, but B, you have to be able to work, or willing to work, to keep that growth happening. We're going to shift a little bit now. We're going to move away from A&S. But David, can you, and I know I'm coming off the cuff with this, so do the best you can with it, but can you briefly explain the general task org of the 3Ds across 724, just to give the audience a scope of what you guys are doing?
Yeah, I'll do my best. It's kind of a complicated conversation. We've actually gone through some change. So at the group level, we've got 57 3 Deltas across a 750-ish man group, right? So they're not all contained in one area, which complicates things a little bit. They're doing very different things in some cases. So it's a lot to manage from a leadership perspective. But for 3Ds, we have everything from kind of what Tyler talked about, that he does radio operations. Hey, I'm going to throw on a ruck, and I got to walk the team through calling in airstrikes and all that kind of stuff, to high-end networking and systems support. I got to provide portal services for a commander or something. So it's a broad spectrum of things we're doing. So you could come here as a 3D, and depending on what your aptitude is and where our vacancies are, you could be assigned directly to operational teams, doing some real direct support stuff on the ground, or you could be sitting in a data center environment. And there's everything in between. And some of what we're doing doesn't even follow a traditional Air Force mindset on what 3 Deltas should be doing. A lot that we're doing in the tech realm, development, and using the battle spaces that we're getting in, even as a country these days, are more unique than they have been for the past 15, 20 years, right? The enemies that we're facing are harder to face. That means communications and tech is becoming more and more important, but it's also more and more complicated. And 3Ds are really kind of having to solve some of those tough problems. How can I take things that I get off the shelf and modify those to work for an operational team in these varied environments? So there's a lot we're doing, and there's definitely areas that give 3 Deltas an opportunity to have a wide range of roles and responsibilities. Tyler hit on it a little bit earlier when he was talking about his days back in 5th Combat Comm, where he was a radio guy, and they didn't want a radio guy touching computers. And that was my experience in the Air Force as well. And, I've been here a long time, and I probably kind of lost sight of that. But as I talk to other young airmen and NCOs that come in, it seems like they're still very compartmentalized. Here's your job. Don't go outside that boundary. And that's one of the things that we try to quickly break, guys, because in the 3D perspective, that's where it stops. AFSCs, there's multiple AFSCs under the 3D umbrella, and they all kind of have specific roles. For us here in the 724, we only care about the 3D portion. We may need you to operate a radio one day, and the next day do some backside server stuff. And for some people, that's exciting, because, hey, I have no constraints. I can learn a lot. It goes back to the people with drive that are really looking to be better and improve their skill set. There's less boundaries here. If you've got the desire and we have the need, you can do it. I don't care if you're a client systems guy or a cybersecurity guy or a systems operator. Like, come in and we'll put you where your skill set says is best. So a lot to be had, and a lot of opportunities in my experience to do things that the Air Force is doing less and less of.
Yeah, David, can you explain how guys and girls get onboarded coming in as a new 3D member to the group? And then I want to get some of Tyler's experience of when he came and went through that process.
Yeah, so I mentioned that things have kind of changed over the years. We've definitely tried to standardize that process a little bit better to give to make it a little bit more of a routine, repeatable task. You go through the A&S process, and if you're selected, based on your timeline coming here, we now have a course established that all communicators go to when they first get here. I talked a little bit about how we do a bunch of things, right? Special tactics is different than what base comm squadron needs, and the Air Force is not necessarily training the skill sets we need. So we've realized that we kind of need to give everybody a common baseline for technical skills, also tactical skills. So we've developed this course called Special Tactics Communicators course that we've really only kind of gotten off the ground in the last year. We're gaining some traction with it, but for the vast majority of the people coming in, that's going to be the first step for a communicator. And it does teach you a lot of the basic skill sets that you need to kind of be to fill most of the positions across the group. But there are a lot of positions that require a lot more skill sets. So one of the things for me that besides the technical skills is the cultural piece. If I had to say what was more important from a stick standpoint, for me it would be like it's the mindset and the culture that we ingrain in 3Ds as they come in, because this world is different. And sometimes you can be the smartest guy in the room, but depending on your personality and how you get along with small teams, you may find that you have a hard time here. So we send them through this course to not only kind of give them a crash course on what 724 does and what some of the basic skill sets are from a technical, tactical perspective, but we also kind of try to give them a mindset that's going to make them successful here, because there are high expectations, and we expect, and our operational teams expect a lot out of our support guys. So we try to get them off on a good start and give them all the tools they need to be successful.
What time frame are we talking about? So when they get here, David, and I know they in process get their families settled, how long is stick, and how long after they get here? So I guess you're probably having to wait till enough folks come in to run the course. How does that work?
The course is 3 months. Ideally, we're PCSing someone in 45 to 60 days prior to stick course to give them enough time to kind of settle in, get their families, if they've got it, household, in process, all that kind of stuff, and then go straight into stick. That's the ideal scenario. So at the end of that process, we go through what we call a slating process, and we base it off, operational unit needs are always number one. But I do believe strongly that a happy worker is a better worker. And if you can put someone where they want to be, then you're probably going to get more out of that person. So we do to try to take that into account. If we can't right out the gate, we try to put them on a path, or at least that's what we're trying to do more and more now these days, and say, I need you to do this for me. But if you do these things, eventually you can move on and do these other things. So somewhere between 6 and 8 months usually is where typically someone might get assigned to the work center, and kind of whichever work center it may be, and kind of really start doing their day-to-day job. But training is never ending. And it's always
Tyler, from your level, Tyler, did you go through stick when you got here?
I did. Yeah, I went through the first stick class that we had.
What was that experience like? And what are like the people that are out here listening to David describe that? Put them at ease a little bit. Like some of them will probably be excited. Some of them will probably be like, "Ooh, that sounds pretty intimidating." What was your experience like, and how would you relate that back out to the people?
My experience was good. It's a very structured course. There's different training blocks throughout the course, and it moves pretty quickly. At least the class that I went through. It's a very kind of fast and furious course, and there's a lot of physical aspect to that course too. There's a very well structured PT portion, and I think that portion was very, very effective to have in the class. Kind of helps you, it induces a little bit of stress, and then it helps to kind of the way you work through that stress in a technical aspect. If that makes any sense, you just kind of get your heart rate going, and then you go and you have to think critically and fix and solve problems as they're presented. And the course, when I went through the course, was 2 months long, and it went pretty quick. You learn a lot in that class. I was a radio troop coming here, and so that radio block for me was even then I learned quite a bit about radios that I didn't know at my previous unit. And then they hit the whole networking portion and on. And even though it was a pretty short course, there was a lot of information that was taught and a lot of information learned. And it is a baseline course. It's not going to teach you everything you need to know to be successful, but it gives you the tools and a good baseline to start at to continue that growth. And like Dave said, it puts you in a mindset during that course. And I did really appreciate that part of it. Kind of makes you think a little bit differently than you did before. And once you learn how your actions here directly impact missions, that definitely helps with that mindset.
I love this whole concept. Go ahead, David.
Yeah, I want to I appreciate you going down that direction, because I do think about that sometimes. Are we scaring people off by some of the things we say? Because I recognize, it can be very easy, even of a long Air Force career, to just kind of let the Air Force take you where the Air Force wants to take you. You just get orders and you move out. It takes a deliberate decision by people to come to a place like this. So that can be apprehensive for even the most confident people. So yeah, you got to take an active decision, and that could be scary. I would definitely tell people that I wouldn't have it any other way. I wouldn't do it any different. Like, it's the experiences I've gotten here have been immense, and very, very rewarding. And to kind of re-hit on it, like, yep, there are some tactical things we go through and stick, but it's really just to give everybody kind of some of that basic understanding. Every person that comes here, every 3D that gets hired here is not jumping out of airplanes and is not rucking. There's people out there that want that, and I think typically we don't necessarily have a problem getting those 3 deltas, because they don't get to do that in a lot of places. So if they hear there's tactical things and they want to be more like that, then it's easy to get those kind of guys. They're naturally going to be drawn here and not be scared away from that. But man, we need the nerds as well. So I don't want to scare the nerds away out there. We are doing a lot of stuff on the network side and the systems side and the tech side that are super nerdy, and that require people that just want to tinker with things and figure out new ways to use old tech and all that kind of stuff. We need that just as much as we need those guys that want to go around and with the team and throw on a ruck. So please, if anything about what we say interests you, or if you feel apprehensive, like another thing I would absolutely say is reach out. Like, we want to bring good people here. And we're always willing to talk about what we do and kind of express some of our experiences and get more into detail about all the things we're doing. I think there's a lot of rewarding opportunities here, and there's a lot of different things you can experience. So, don't let the tactical scare you.
Yeah, I just want to put out to the audience too, if you want some more information, all you have to do is go to our website, contact our support side recruiters, and they will get you in touch with David or whoever else can just give you a phone call or whatever and answer some questions if you have them. I love it. Let's move into your day-to-day life here operationally now. And I'm with Tyler out at Det One. Det One is our detachment that runs all of the training for the group. I get to watch him, and now Tim. It was Andrew. I'll tell you from a retired operator perspective, and from a guy who runs a selection process now for the operator side, what I see these guys doing on a daily basis, and it goes back to what David's been saying. They are not siloed into, I'm only a radio guy. These dudes solve problems, whatever you throw at them. And usually they're overwhelmed every day, and they still get the problem solved for you. So I have mad respect for these guys, and I have ever since I got to the organization in '97. They have been some of the best support folks that I've ever worked with at that unit. So Tyler, just help the audience understand what your daily battle rhythm kind of is, and maybe describe a little bit of the last OTC, because it was kind of a unicorn of how fast it was, and you were kind of the only guy there at times. So how did that work out?
Well, I'll start with in garrison. So even in between OTC classes, we provide, the in garrison support for not just the students, but the cadre and the people at the det that work day to day. And in garrison is definitely a lot of help desk support. As we all know, the whole world revolves around email and internet and SharePoint and stuff like that. And every day is just something new, something, another problem, finding a solution to an issue. And you don't always have a phone home button to push, if that makes sense, to reach out for help. And if you do have that button to push, everyone else is just as busy, just as busy as you are. So you gotta find solutions to fix problems, and sometimes it's on the spot. And we day to day it's computers, printers, user accounts. People can't log in, or they can't print, they can't get their email. Sometimes it's a tough fix, and other times it's a super simple fix. And going into the OTC course, that's a whole flip-flop from what I do in garrison. During OTC, I provide RTO support on the trips. And so basically all the operators go out with a loadout, and that loadout is going to consist of radios, phone that runs specific software we use, tablets, and other equipment that they take out. And my job is to make sure that they have all the right frequencies they need, the right CommSec that they need, imagery, any type of data that they need for that mission that they're going on, or that training event that they're doing. And part of that includes going out with them on target during training and providing that direct level support on target in case something goes wrong. And it does. We work with electronics, so there's always something that breaks. There's always something that doesn't work 100% right, and being there to kind of help them through that issue. They have certain tasks that they have to complete during OTC, and if they're worried about their radio, then they're not focusing on what they need to accomplish. And so being there to kind of take care of that portion of it is definitely something that it happens each trip. And so it's a really rewarding job, though. It's very high pace. OTC's 7-8 months long, and it's constant trips, back-to-back trips, whether you're going with the PJs or you're going with the controllers and TAC-Ps. But it's definitely rewarding, and you learn a lot. I've learned a lot just going through. I worked a little bit with the OTC class before this one, and then I went through this entire class working with the guys. And every single trip there's something new that we're learning, and something that we want to test out, some new capability, and work with the guys on that. And it's definitely nice to be able to do that and gain that experience.
Man, that was a great explanation. Thanks for that. David, how about from your level?
Yeah, well, a little bit different experience at my level than Tyler's. I'm definitely not solving some of those tactical problems anymore. It's more strategically focused. It's facilitation. You know, how can I help the Tylers and the people like Tyler get the resources that they need, and also the time that they need, you know, by pushing back on taskings and priorities, trying to lay out overall visions of where we're trying to go, which even that stuff, you know, you get to a point in your career and it's like you kind of realize that I'm not that technical guy anymore, but I've really kind of enjoyed the transition. It's just as rewarding in some ways to be involved in laying out, you know, where the organization is going to go long term from a communications standpoint. I've definitely found a lot of value in that and enjoyed it. But you know, meetings, manpower documents, CPRs, all those kind of things got out in the Air Force, we still have here. But even at my level, you know, the scope of responsibility at the junior NCO level is broad. It's even, it's just as broad at my level. So where in the Air Force you may have 05s, 06s making some of these types of strategic decisions. We've got senior NCOs and captains kind of making some of these, hey, we're going to go down this path where we establish a $10 million network that's going to provide capabilities to our organization for the 5 to 10 year range. That's some of the stuff we're going through right now. And for anybody who's kind of got some big picture vision, you can kind of look at that and say, that's exciting. You know, it's a little bit scary, but it's also something that could really be a major impact and can affect the unit for long term. So I enjoy what I do for certain. It's a battle some days, as it is probably a lot of places. But as long as you still enjoy what you're doing and you're passionate about it, you'll find ways to succeed and it'll be good.
Yeah, I love it. I got to the organization as a senior airman in 97, and I left 11 years later as a senior master sergeant. So I kind of grew up there. I was the lowest ranking guy on my team when I got there, and then I left as the ops soup. So, all right, guys, Tyler, I'm starting with you on this one. This is our last question. So imagine you're on stage and you're getting to talk to every 3D in the Air Force. Why would you tell them that they should make the 724 a future goal in their career?
I would say if you're that type of person who's motivated and has that drive to make things happen and constantly make improvements, this is a place where you'll see that direct correlation between your work and the results that happen, whether that's here in garrison or downrange.
Love it. David, round us off here.
Yeah. So you're not sustaining when you're here. You're innovating. You know, 3Ds are not coming in and just maintaining status quo. They have the opportunity to come in and really develop things and innovate. And not to be cliche, but I mean, in some cases you're standing on the shoulders of giants. You know, I mean, the people that we support, the missions that we support are historic in a lot of cases. And we're at the forefront of that. You know, even as support guys, like we can directly tie the things we are doing to the success of historical missions. If that doesn't get you fired up, then yeah, maybe this place is not for you. But if any part of that is like, wow, that sounds exciting, like there is something for you to do here.
Love it, man. I love y'all's answers. Guys, this has been, for me, from the guy sitting on the other end of the computer, this has been awesome. This has been one of my favorite podcasts so far. So I appreciate you guys coming out, man. All right, folks, that's it for this week. Really enjoyed having David and Tyler on. just explaining life as a 3D inside the organization. And we also hit a lot about the culture here too. So no matter if you're a 3D or you're in some other combat mission support AFSC, or either if you're an operator or civilian looking at maybe making the 724 a future job or assignment for you, hopefully this week has solidified a little bit of that in your head, that this place is doing some special things, and we need you to come up and help us solve some of the hardest problems the nation has. So with that said, we appreciate all of you tuning in to the Insight Thru Experience podcast, and we'll see you next time.